Shanquella, can you at least fight back?
No.
At least something. At least.
Shanquella Robinson died last October in Mexico while on a trip with friends. Her father is now speaking out days after the DOJ decided not to file charges in connection to her death. This comes as an American autopsy showed her spine was still intact when she died. That contradicted an autopsy released by Mexican investigators that said she died from a severe spinal cord injury.
Her name was Shanquella Robinson. 25 years old, she owned her own businesses, a degree, her whole life ahead of her. She got on a plane to celebrate somebody else's birthday with 6 people she called her friends, and she never came back. The people who were supposed to have her back made sure of that. When that video dropped online, people could not keep scrolling because what they saw was not an accident. It was not alcohol poisoning. It was not a fall. It was a beating, and everybody in that room watched it happen. Let me tell you something. By the time this story is done, you are going to have questions. A lot of them, and the most painful one is not who did it. The most painful one is why nobody has been held accountable. Not a single person, not one arrest, not one day in a courtroom, nothing. This is the story of Shanquella Robinson, and we are not letting it go quietly. Before we get into what happened inside that villa in Mexico, you need to know who Shanquella Robinson actually was. Because the way this story gets told sometimes, she gets reduced to a victim, and she was so much more than that long before any of this touched her life. Shanquella was born and raised in Charlotte, North Carolina. She went to Winston-Salem State University, got her degree, came home, and got straight to work building something for herself. She started 2 businesses from scratch. One was called Exquisite Kids, a hair braiding service for children. The other was Exquisite Boutique, a women's fashion line. She had a social media following. People were drawn to her energy, and everyone who knew her said the same things over and over: hardworking, kind, genuinely ambitious. Her parents, Salamandra and Bernard Robinson, and her sister, Quilla Long, have said it in every single interview since her death. She had no health problems. She was not in any kind of trouble. Her life was going somewhere real. Like, this was a woman building something, not somebody on a downward path, somebody on her way up. Now, the 6 people who traveled to Cabo with Shanquella were Khalil Cook, Malik St. Patrick Dyer, Winter Essence Donovan, Elise Michelle Hyatt, Dajane Jackson, and Nazir Wiggins. Most of them were from the Charlotte area, same as Shanquella. The word friends gets used loosely here, and once everything came out, how close any of them actually were to her became a much harder question to answer. What we do know is that Dajane Jackson was the one who organized and booked the whole trip. She planned it around her own birthday, so on the surface, this was supposed to be a celebration. They booked a luxury villa at the Puerto Los Cabos resort, arrived on October 28, 2022, and were supposed to stay through the 31st. A customer service assistant at the resort who worked closely with the group throughout their stay noticed something from the very first night at dinner. Shanquella seemed isolated, out of place. Even then, on day 1, something about the dynamic in that group was off. That detail did not come out right away. Nobody outside that villa knew it at the time, but looking back, it says a lot about what the atmosphere was like inside that house from the moment they arrived. Now here is where the timeline becomes everything. Every single hour of October 29th matters, so pay attention. According to resort staff, a fight happened at the villa somewhere between 7 and 8:30 in the morning. Investigators were able to narrow that window down because of where sunlight was hitting a headboard in a video that was recorded inside the house that same morning. A video the group was never supposed to share with the world. We will get into exactly what that footage shows, but first, understand what the group did in the hours after that fight, because this is where the cover story started to take shape. Around 2:13 in the afternoon, one of the companions called a doctor from the American Medical Center to come to the villa. Around the same time, Khalil Cook called Shanquella's mother, Salamondra, and told her Shanquella was not feeling well and that help was on the way. The doctor, Dr. Carolina Beatriz Ornelas Gutierrez, arrived about an hour later. She found Shanquella dehydrated, disoriented, and barely able to function. The group told the doctor she had been drinking heavily. And then, oh, so now they do not want her taken to a hospital. They refuse. They want her treated right there in the villa. The doctor recommended a hospital transfer. The group said no, so they treated her on site with an IV drip. During that treatment, Shanquella had a seizure at around 4:13 in the afternoon. Then she went into cardiac arrest. The group called emergency services. Those services did not arrive until 4:49. The paramedics worked on her for over an hour. 14 rounds of CPR, 5 doses of adrenaline, 60 defibrillator shocks. Nothing worked. Shanquella Robinson was pronounced dead at 5:57 that evening. The Mexican police came, took statements from the group and from the doctor, and wrote the whole thing up as alcohol poisoning with no visible injuries. The Cabo Six flew back to the United States, and 3 of them, Donovan, Cook, and Jackson, went directly to Salamondra Robinson's home. They dropped off her daughter's belongings, looked her in the eye, and told her that Shanquella drank too much. That is what killed her. Salamondra had no reason yet to believe anything different. She took their word for it. What else was she supposed to do? Make it make sense. They flew home, walked up to the woman's door, looked her in her face, and lied. Back in Mexico, a forensic examination was completed on November 4th, and what the pathologist found had absolutely nothing to do with alcohol. The cause of death was a severe injury to the spinal cord, along with something called atlas luxation, meaning the very first bone of the spine, the one that connects the neck to the skull, had been forced out of place. The doctor estimated Shanquella died roughly 15 minutes after that injury happened. The report documented bruising on her forehead, bruising on both sides of her hips, a blood pool under her scalp that was 120 centimeters wide, and damage to the tissue in her neck. The death was classified as violent, not accidental, not alcohol related, violent, period. The body told the truth that the group refused to tell. About 2 weeks after Shanquella's death, a short video began circulating online. It moved fast through social media, through communities that were not going to let this story be buried. And the reason people kept sharing it was because once you saw it, you could not explain it away.
Quilla, can you at least fight back? At least something. At least fight back, something.
Get up, bro. Get up.
The video was recorded inside the bedroom of that villa at around 7:30 in the morning on October 29th, hours before anyone called a doctor. In it, Shanquella is naked and being beaten, the woman attacking her, later confirmed to be Dajane. Jackson is hitting her in the head, grabbing her by the neck, throwing her to the floor, and continuing to beat her while she is already down. There is a man's voice off camera, believed to be one of the others in the group, who says to her, "Quilla, can you at least fight back? At least something?" And Shanquella, barely able to hold herself up, says no. That is the last thing she says on that tape. At least two other people are present in the room. One of them is the one holding the camera. Not a single person tries to stop it. Shankella's mother watched that video and confirmed that the person being beaten was her daughter, and everything that video showed lined up directly with what the Mexican autopsy had already found: serious trauma to the head, the neck, and the upper body, fully consistent with the beating captured in that footage. Girl, a mother had to watch that. Think about that for a second. Once the video was out in the world, the group's stories started shifting. FBI documents released later showed that the accounts they gave to investigators were full of holes. Some said Shanquella was found unconscious on the floor. Some said it was a bed. Some said a chair. Some said a companion called for help. Others pointed to a maid. Others said it was the hotel concierge. Some eventually admitted there had been some kind of fight. One version added that Shanquella had been fighting and jumped. Another version included a detail about trying to put her in a shower to help her sober up, and that she had hit her head on the toilet in the process. The FBI documents reference a redacted person who told investigators they saw pictures of Shankella's body and said, "There are bruises on her, and she looks like she was stomped on." Anyways, that detail, pulled directly from those FBI files, is one of the most disturbing things documented in this entire case, and it came from someone who was there. Now, here is where law enforcement gets involved on both sides of the border. And this is also where the story goes from heartbreaking to genuinely infuriating, because what follows is a series of moves by the people and institutions that were supposed to deliver justice, that instead delivered confusion, delays, and ultimately nothing.
And Jess, you've been following the story for months. Catch us up. What do you have? What's the latest?
Hi, yeah. So I'm right outside of actually the federal courthouse, and we were just here a few months ago when a federal judge heard the arguments in a lawsuit that the family filed against the FBI, the Department of State, as well as all of the 6 travel mates. Now, it's been more than 2.5 years since Shanquella Robinson died in that mysterious death in Mexico. And we had seen that video that went viral showing her getting beaten by one of those travel mates. But after all of this time, no one has been held accountable. So like I mentioned, the family sued all of the folks in the trip, the FBI and the Department of State, claiming negligence for the federal agency. And so now the woman who has been accused as being the main aggressor in those videos, she's asking for those charges to be dropped. So Imani Green, she changed her name. Her name was Dejanay Jackson, but now she goes by Imani Green.
On November 16th, Mexican authorities reopened the case, this time treating it as a possible femicide. That is the legal term in Mexico for a killing that happens because of a person's gender. 7 days later, Mexican prosecutors issued a formal arrest warrant for Dejanay Jackson, naming her as the direct aggressor in Shanquella's death. They contacted Interpol and asked for help getting her back to Mexico to face those charges. Mexican investigators also opened a separate line of inquiry into the doctor who treated Shanquella at the villa, the local police officers who responded that day, and the state attorney, to find out whether any of them had mishandled the case from the very beginning. On the American side, the FBI opened its own investigation on November 18th. Agents went back to the villa in Los Cabos, interviewed witnesses, and pulled a phone from one of the people on the trip. What was on that phone has never been made public. It remains redacted to this day. So what? An entire phone's worth of evidence, and the public gets nothing. Moving on. In January of 2023, the FBI sent a list of 11 specific questions to Mexican prosecutors. They wanted to know who owned the villa, whether there was any security footage, what the ambulance crew's official report said, and whether all the witnesses had actually been properly interviewed. Those questions were never answered, at least not publicly. Meanwhile, the U.S. State Department had initially put out a statement saying there was no clear evidence of foul play, basing that entirely on the early Mexican police report. The same report that said alcohol poisoning, no visible injuries. Once the video came out and the autopsy findings were public, the State Department quietly shifted their language toward protecting the welfare of U.S. citizens abroad. But they never actually walked back their original statement. They just let it sit there. Oh, so now you want to talk about the welfare of U.S. citizens? After you already told the world there was no evidence of foul play? Make it make sense. Then came the second autopsy. And this is the part of the story that made a lot of people lose their minds because it felt like the ground was being pulled out from under everything. After Shanquella's body was brought back to the United States, a second autopsy was performed on November 17th in Charlotte by a doctor named Thomas Owens, and his findings were completely different from the Mexican report. The American autopsy found the spine intact, no spinal cord damage, and listed the cause of death as undetermined, noting that the brain had suffered damage as a result of the heart stopping. The toxicology did confirm one thing: there was zero alcohol in Shanquella's system. Zero. That killed the she drank herself to death story completely and permanently. But without the spinal injury finding, the clearest physical link between the beating in that video and what caused her death was now being disputed between two medical reports from two different countries. Dr. Owen said the difference in findings came down to timing. The Mexican exam happened before Shanquella's body was treated at a funeral home. The American one came after. He said that process may have changed what was visible in the spine, like the body went through preparation, and now the key injury cannot be confirmed the same way. That is the explanation. That is what the family was left with. Shanquella's father, Bernard Robinson, has been one of the most consistent voices through all of this. In one interview, he said,
They just saying a lack of evidence. But eventually, God gonna do something where it's gonna be evidence. So it's just coming. It's just a matter of time.
It just hurt to record it. These 6 individuals out here came back to the United States, walking around here, like they ain't did nothing. And he is right, because that is exactly what was happening. 6 people flew home, went about their lives, and not one of them had been arrested, charged, or held accountable in any way. In April of 2023, the FBI officially closed its investigation. Federal prosecutors announced they would not be filing any charges because there was not enough evidence to move forward. The 2 conflicting autopsies, the redacted documents, the witnesses who kept changing their stories, none of it was enough, apparently, to take a single person to trial. I said what I said. The FBI closed the case, walked away, and left a family standing there with a video, a Mexican arrest warrant, a mother who had been lied to at her own front door, and no answers. With no criminal charges filed anywhere and the Mexican arrest warrant sitting completely untouched, Shanquella's family made a decision. If the government was not going to hold these people accountable in a criminal court, they were going to drag them into a civil one. In October of 2023, on the 2nd anniversary of Shanquella's death, Her mother, Salamandra Robinson, filed a wrongful death lawsuit against all 6 members of the Cabo Six. The lawsuit asked for $100 million and listed the claims as wrongful death, physical assault, negligence, conspiracy, and emotional distress. The heart of the case was straightforward. Dajane Jackson beat Shanquella Robinson while 5 other people stood around, filmed it, and did nothing to stop it. They blocked proper medical help, flew home, and then lied to her mother about what happened. The family also filed a separate suit against the FBI and the U.S. State Department directly, arguing that both agencies handled the investigation poorly and that their delays made it harder for justice to happen. But hey, you already know how the other side responded. 4 of them, Elise Hyatt, Winter Donovan, Malik Dyer, and Khalil Cook, filed motions asking the judge to throw the whole case out or at minimum move it to Mexico. Their argument was that because the incident happened there, a Mexican court was the right place to handle it. Their lawyers pointed to the witnesses, the doctors, the local police, and most of the physical evidence all being in Mexico. Shankella's family attorney, Sue Ann Robinson, was not having it. She argued that the conspiracy and the cover up happened right here on American soil. 6 Americans flew home, coordinated their stories, walked into a grieving mother's house, and lied to her face. That happened in the United States. She also raised real concerns about putting a trial in Mexico, a different legal system, no jury, and a language barrier that the family would have to navigate while fighting for their daughter. The convenient forum would be the forum in which all 6 of the individuals who were present in the room when the crime occurred, for them to be heard and give their testimony and have their day in court here. Bernard Robinson was in that courtroom, and he said something that cut through all the legal back and forth in a way that no lawyer's argument could. He said, "Only thing I'm going to do is stand for Shanquella and talk, be her mouth, be her voice. Period. That man has not stopped showing up for his daughter, not once." Then there is the response from Dajane Jackson herself. By 2025, she had legally changed her name to Amani Green, moved to Connecticut, and filed her own response to the lawsuit. She claimed self-defense. She argued that Shanquella had been acting out because she was drunk, that Shanquella had provoked the confrontation herself, and that too much time had passed for the lawsuit to even be valid. She also claimed she had not been properly served with the court papers. Oh, so now the woman on the floor, the one who was naked and could barely hold herself up, the one who said nothing except no when asked to fight back, she provoked it. She brought it on herself. That is the defense: a new name, a new state, and a self-defense claim against a woman who never threw a single punch. Shankella's mother filed a response in court and pointed directly to the video, the one where her daughter says nothing except no, the one where Shanquella does not raise a single hand in her own defense while being punched, thrown, and beaten by the woman who planned the trip herself. Anyways, in early 2026, the case got another wave of attention when the Crime Junkie podcast released an episode dedicated to Shankella's story. It quickly hit number 4 on Spotify in the United States. What made it notable was an anonymous source the hosts called Mike, a man they said was one of the men who had been on that trip, who had never spoken to police or media before reaching out to them. According to the podcast, Mike said that at around 3 in the morning on October 29th, hours before the assault video was recorded, Dajani Jackson called him crying. She told him she and Shanquella had gotten into a heated argument during a drinking session, that a broken glass had cut her foot in the process, and that she wanted Shanquella gone from the trip because it was her birthday. Mike talked her down. He thought it was over. He had no idea a physical attack had happened hours later because nobody in the group told him. He arrived at the villa after the doctor had already been called and spent hours with Shanquella, believing the group's story that it was alcohol related. The podcast hosts were clear that they could not independently confirm everything Mike said, but they noted that some of what he told them was too sensitive to put on air, and they said directly that whoever is looking for answers in this case should be looking at people's phones and call logs. As of the time of this video, no law enforcement agency has publicly followed up on anything Mike shared. So what? A source comes forward with a timeline and details that investigators never had on record, and nobody picks up the phone. Nobody follows up. Nothing. In June of 2025, a federal judge dismissed the claims against the FBI and the State Department, ruling that those agencies were protected under laws that prevent the government from being sued in most situations. The lawsuit against the 6 individuals, however, remained alive. In late January of 2026, the remaining claims were sent back to Mecklenburg County Superior Court in Charlotte to be handled as a state-level case. As of the time this video was made, no trial date has been set. The Mexican arrest warrant for Amani Green, formerly Dajanae Jackson, is still active, and it has never once been acted on. Moving on, but not really, because this is not the kind of story you just move on from. 3 years, 3 full years have passed since Shanquella Robinson died in that villa in Los Cabos. And in those 3 years, not one person has spent a single night in a jail cell because of what happened to her. Not one criminal trial, not one conviction. The Mexican arrest warrant is active and has never been acted on. The FBI closed its investigation and walked away. The State Department never corrected itself. And the 6 people who were in that house that day have gone right back to living their lives. One of them changed her name. Let me tell you something. When a person changes their name and moves to a new state in the middle of a lawsuit that names them as the direct aggressor in someone's death, that is not a coincidence. That is not a fresh start. That is someone hoping the world forgets. And this channel is telling you right now, we are not forgetting. What this case exposed is something a lot of people in the Black community already know in their bones, but rarely see reflected back in a national conversation. When a young Black woman is killed, the system does not move the same way. The urgency is not the same. The resources are not the same. The follow through is not the same. The video of Shanquella being beaten spread because ordinary people refused to let it disappear. It was not a government agency or a major news network that kept this story alive in its earliest days. It was regular people sharing it, talking about it, demanding that someone pay attention. And even after the whole world saw that video, even after a Mexican forensic doctor documented the injuries, even after the toxicology confirmed there was no alcohol in her system, even after her own mother watched the footage and identified her daughter, the system still found a way to say it was not enough evidence, not enough jurisdiction, not the right court, not the right country, not enough. Like, at what point does a video of a beating, a forensic report documenting a broken neck, and a mother's testimony become enough? What does enough even look like when the victim is a young Black woman who trusted the wrong people? Shanquella's Father Bernard said it plainly, and it has stayed with everyone who heard it. He said, she wasn't perfect, but she did not deserve for them 6 individuals to take her life and come back here and lie about it, and nothing has been done about it. That sentence carries the weight of this entire story. She was not perfect. Nobody is. But imperfection does not make you deserving of a beating. It does not make you deserving of being left on a floor while people film you. It does not make your death something that can be written off as undetermined and quietly filed away. Shanquella Robinson built 2 businesses. She got her degree, she had a following, a family that loved her, and a future that was genuinely going somewhere. She got on a plane with people she trusted and was beaten to death while they watched. And then those people went home and looked her mother in the face and lied. They sat across from a grieving woman and let her believe her daughter drank herself to death. And then they scattered, changed names, filed motions, hired lawyers, and kept living. The civil case is still moving through the courts. The lawsuit against the Cabo Six is now a state level case in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. No trial date has been set. Amani Green, born Dajane Jackson, is still out there. The Mexican arrest warrant with her original name on it is still active and still collecting dust. Anyways, the family has not stopped. Salamondra Robinson has not stopped. Bernard Robinson has not stopped. They have shown up to every court date, given every interview, and kept their daughter's name in the conversation, even when institutions tried to close the door on it. That kind of love and that kind of fight deserves to be seen. This case is also a reminder of something that should not need repeating but clearly still does. When you travel, especially internationally, you need to know who you are traveling with. Not just their name, not just their face, their character. Because when something goes wrong thousands of miles from home, the people in that room with you are the first line of response. And in Shankella's case, those people were not a lifeline. They were the threat. She trusted them with her safety. She trusted them with her life. And they used that trust to cover up what they did to her, coordinate a lie, and deliver that lie directly to her mother's front door. That is not just a crime. That is a betrayal so deep it is hard to put into words. And the fact that it has gone unanswered this long is something every single one of us should be angry about. Shanquella Robinson deserved better than the trip those people took her on. She deserved better than the story they brought back to her mother. She deserved better than the silence and the legal maneuvering and the name changes that followed. And she deserves better than being forgotten. Her family is still fighting, and until someone is actually held responsible, this story is not over. If this story moved you, share it, talk about it. Keep Shanquella Robinson's name alive, because the people who wanted this buried are counting on the world moving on. Do not give them that. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think anyone will ever be held criminally accountable for what happened to Shanquella? And if you are new here, this channel covers stories of domestic violence and crimes committed by people in romantic and close relationships. Subscribe so you never miss one. We will see you in the next one.